wanted to be a jazz pianist. So I really pursued that for a while. And then I realized, you know what? Life as a jazz pianist kind of sucks. And maybe this software thing ain't that bad. I had to be like Bill Gates level, billionaire out of this world kind of success story by the age of 30, or I should really go kill myself. Like that was kind of the belief in my head. Really the essence for me for a long time has been on that inner path. I think that like investing in our own growth, inner growth, healing, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually is the best investment that we can possibly make.
All right, yes, this is Mr. Rembrandt, and this is another episode of Verbal Artwork with Mr. Rembrandt. I have a great guest here today, Mr. Calvin Corelli, and this will be a very interesting show today. Calvin Corelli is a software engineer, serial entrepreneur, and spiritual teacher. Mr. Calvin is the founder of Simplero.com, which is an all-in-one business platform to help people and entrepreneurs. You can find Mr. Calvin Corelli at calvincorelli.com. He has some great information about himself and the different things that he's involved in. You can also find him on Instagram and Twitter at Calvin Corelli. Calvin also has a business, bodymeal.us, where he has a vegan power meal supplement. Calvin also has a workout program and or website that we'll get into with two excellent individuals, it appears, that helped him start that or is working with that. I don't quite know 100% of the details, but I think Calvin will lay that out as we go into the podcast. Also, Calvin appears to be coming out with a book soon called We Can Do This. We'll ask Calvin about that and his journey and what that book is about. Calvin says in 2008, he started a course that changed his life. So without further ado, I have Mr. Calvin Corelli on. Great to have you on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rembrandt. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to meet you and meet your audience and see where this conversation goes.
Great. So I won't waste any time. Let's get into it. Tell me a little bit about, I just went over your background, a lot of different things. So tell me a little bit about, for the audience, your journey and how you have come to where you are today, which is all of this success and things that you're involved in.
Yeah, you bet, man. So I was born into a family in Denmark. So I'm born and raised in Denmark, of two parents who were both entrepreneurs and both software developers. And this is like way back when there was just like literally a handful of computers in the countries when they got involved with it. So it was super early days. And they taught me how to program, and as well as like just watching them be business owners. They had each their own business. And so that definitely impacted me a lot. So choosing that sort of entrepreneurial path and the software path was always an obvious choice for me, even though my first passion was I wanted to be a jazz pianist. So I really pursued that for a while. And then I realized, you know what? Life as a jazz pianist kind of sucks. And maybe this software thing ain't that bad. Music is still part of me and part of what I love to do. So, so I got into starting companies, but then honestly, I was struggling a lot for many years. I had success, I was paying the bills, etc., but I wasn't happy, and I didn't know which direction to go in, and it wasn't really growing to where I wanted it to go. I had this notion that I'd picked up somehow that I had to be like Bill Gates level, billionaire out of this world kind of success story by the age of 30, or I should really go kill myself. Like that was kind of the belief in my head. So at some point after I turned 30, it went pretty steep downhill because I was like, I passed 30 now and I still ain't there, and I don't have a path to get there, and like, I should just go kill myself. Instead of killing myself, I got some therapy, I got some help, coaching, body therapy, spiritual teacher, all of that stuff. And that was really what led me to starting Simplero, because I realized how much this inner work, if you will, spiritual work, therapy work, coaching, etc., how helpful that was and how needed that is for every other entrepreneur that I know. And so I got into, I want to teach this stuff. How do I do that? Discovered online marketing. But like, all right, I need a platform for this. Gluing stuff together from WordPress to like whatever different tool back then. I was like, this sucks. I'll start building my own tools. And that's how that thing just started to grow and started to build. Really the essence for me for a long time has been on that inner path. I think that like investing in our own growth, inner growth, healing, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually is the best investment that we can possibly make because, we can't take our dollars or our Bitcoins or any of that stuff with us when we leave. I mean, we can't take really anything with us when we leave, but what we're going to end up with on our sort of inner bank account is the relationships that we've built, that we've had, and the love that we feel for ourselves and for other people.
Great. Amazing. So already I can see, which a lot of successful people generally have a great story on how they went through a difficult time and got to where they are today. I've had a conversation or an episode with an individual that previously in one of my episodes in which we talked about the same thing on how he went through a dark moment in his life and how that caused him to really get serious and buckle down. And he concludes it was one of the greatest things that could ever happen to him.
100%. Yeah. I had a conversation with it. There's a teacher, her name is Debbie Ford. She passed away like almost a decade ago now. But I had this conversation with her because she has a story her story of how she was like drug addict and rehab and like on her knees, praying to God and all this stuff. I'm like, do I have to become a drug addict and get that far out in order to sort of, have that kind of turning point? And she was like, no, you don't have to, but it helps, right? There's something about like the deeper the pain, the more sort of the phoenix can rise from the ashes in some way. I'm not advocating go out and do drugs and seek out the pain. It will seek you out, but don't shy away from it either. It really is a gift.
Right. No, absolutely. So let's talk about your business a little bit. During the tough times that you were going through, you started Simplero, and Simplero, from what I can see, is an all-in-one site that you can go to that has a lot of different tools that a lot of entrepreneurs and or individuals searching to make a name for themselves, courses, websites, and different things. Why directly that? You said you were trying to figure out a combination of all those different things that you were trying to do, that it appears led you to create Simplero. But could you sum up why directly a website such as that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, what I was teaching spirituality and personal growth to entrepreneurs, and then realized that there was a bigger market for teaching them the marketing skills that I've just acquired, right? I came from a background as a software guy. I didn't really know anything about marketing, but I started studying that because I wanted to sell these trainings. And so I found that there was a bigger market for that. And as I was doing that, I just needed one piece and then another piece and then another piece. So like, the billing part first, being able to charge people, being able to sell something in installment. So you sell it for something that's $2,000, but then people can pay $200 a month for a year, for example, instead, right? Or that kind of stuff. And then I needed to send email. And so I built that piece. And then I needed a membership site, a password protected place on the web where people can log in and they can get their videos and their audios and their texts and whatever content they paid for. So I built that piece. And that's really how it's grown. And you would need a website. All right, let's have a website builder. We need a landing page. Let's have some landing page builders, opt-in, lead magnets, there's so many elements that go into building a business of this sort where we think of it as information marketing, right? You're marketing and selling information of some sort. whether it's coaching or coaching programs or high-end masterminds or ebooks or courses or memberships or like hybrid online, offline educations. Like there's so many formats. And really you want to, as you build out this business, it makes sense to have more in your palette, right? So that you sell something cheap in the beginning to get people in the door and get them to know, like, and trust you. And then you have some higher priced offers, anything from like $1 or $7 or $9 or whatever, all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars, even $100,000 or more. That's kind of the range. And without Simplero, you end up using 8 different tools to manage your business, and it stresses people out and it takes their focus away from the joy of it, of like creating content and connecting with customers and really transforming the lives of the people that you're here to work with. And so, and it also gets more complicated for your customers to have to interact with a bunch of different tools and systems and create logins in each one, and it's confusing for them as well. So I just want to make it really simple and really easy for everybody involved by having everything that you need under one roof, as it were.
No, that sounds great. And definitely seems like a very high performance place where individuals can bring it all together, because anybody who's trying to go through the route of an entrepreneur and or is already an entrepreneur, they know the difficulties in having to use this platform, like maybe ThinkIt for creating a website, and then going over here and creating a landing page to drive marketing, and then to go over here to maybe you want to publish.
And then getting them all to talk to each other properly, right? Which
yes,
is its own whole thing. And then you go on vacation and you sit on some internet with some hotel with shitty internet, and then you get an email from a client that something broke, right? Like, and then you have to sit there and try to figure out, like, is it this system or that system, or like which connection, where did it go wrong? And that's an area where we, for 2 reasons. One is because everything is in one platform. We can easily go in and our support staff can fix that for you, because they have all, sort of everything is in our product. They don't have to log into your other systems. But also we have a whole concierge team, which is our paid professional services arm. So you can just hire us to like do whatever you need, whether it's in your day to day or while you're on vacation and you're trying to be with your family, but stuff broke, right? You can just have our people go in and fix it for you. So we want to take as much of that burden off of people as we can, so they can focus on the things that matter, like connecting with customers, making a difference in people's lives, bringing new customers into the fold, right? Marketing, growing business, transforming these lives.
Great. Yeah, so that sounds like a great program, offering a lot there for entrepreneurs and people who are thinking about being entrepreneurs who need tools in order to go down that path. So definitely we're going to have that and many other things in the show, links that people can go to find your work. So, and that for the guests that are watching is Simplero.com. Has many different tools that people can use to optimize. Moving back a little bit, you were talking about your experience as, what you still are, in software engineer, going through life when you decided who you wanted to be. Why was it that you convinced yourself that any mediocre forms of success in my eyes, or any form of success I would be mediocre if I don't reach the highest pinnacle possible and compare myself to some of the greats to do it, such as Bill Gates? Why was that such the highest goal for you? And why did you convince yourself that if I didn't reach that goal, that anything other than that was complete failure?
It's a good question. I don't know exactly why that was. I think I came into life feeling extremely wrong, right? That I just wasn't good enough. I was not worthy of love. I wasn't worthy of even breathing the air. So it was like I was at a minus a million or something on some scale of worthiness, and I had to like fight my way up. And I don't know where that idea came from exactly. I think that I shared it with my dad later, and he was like, that sounds crazy. That's like bizarre. But I think there was some sort of, I learned some way unconsciously or subconsciously that there was this expectation of high performance. Maybe it was like, those people were presented as examples of like, oh, God, this person is amazing. Look at what Bill Gates did or whatever, Steve Jobs or some of those people. Or I made that up in my mind that like, oh, these are incredible. Like dad would love this person if he did that. Right. So it's kind of like that
Yes.
because like I felt so wrong and unloved. I actually had a moment with my dad some years ago because growing up, I heard from my dad, and I love my dad and adore him today. Um, and he's actually in town. My parents still live in Denmark, and they just arrived last night. I picked them up at the airport to come visit me. So, uh,
Great.
love them much. But uh, um, I I didn't feel loved, and I didn't feel seen or understood as a kid. I think there's
Mm,
two things that a child needs, that anybody needs. We need to be seen and we need to be loved. If we're loved but not seen, then we feel like the love has nothing really to do with us, right? If we're seen but not loved, then it's like, yeah, you see me and you don't like me, right? Like I'm shit. Sorry if you're non-explicit here
no, we're
on
good.
your podcast. Um, and then if you got neither, then like you're really screwed. So I didn't feel loved and I didn't feel seen, but I was told that I was being loved, and it was really weird. I've read there's studies on this that shows that if you don't love your kid and you're just honest about that, that's actually way healthier for the child than if you don't love your kid but you pretend like you do.
Mm,
Because what it does is it messes up our barometer for what love is. And so now we think that love means I'm in a relationship that doesn't feel nourishing, that doesn't feel loving, that doesn't feel like I'm being seen or loved. And then those are the relationships we're going to go and create in our lives, right? With other people, with our friends, with our teammates, with our partners, spouses, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I got. And actually, so I had this conversation with my dad some like 5 years ago where we, had some drinks, and he was like, you know what, son, I never understood who you were. And I'm not sure, I wasn't sure I really liked you, but now I'm starting to see who you are and I really like you. And it was like oddly like warm and wonderful for me to hear, because at that point I didn't really need his love anymore, and it validated what my feelings were growing up. So I think that definitely has something to do with it.
I see. Wow. Well, and that makes me think about why just being honest with people is so important, even if the truth hurts. Because the way I think about it is the truth is something that it could hurt for the long term, but it usually hurts for the short term. Meanwhile, when you
Yeah.
lie with somebody and you're dishonest, that could be long lasting hurt and trauma for a person that is unnecessary when you can just be honest.
It is so important. And it's hard. It's been hard for me. I've just gone through a process because like with my team members and even other people, that like I value connection and love so much that that I hadn't figured out how to give, feedback, how to tell people, hey, this is not what I need. Here's what I need from you instead in any kind of relationship, without making them wrong or disconnecting. I hadn't figured that out in my head. And it was
Hmm.
part of it was an inner thing, and part of it was an outer thing I could process. But it's been a massive game changer for me. Like I can love you and see everything amazing about you. You're a great person. And here's what I need. And I'm gonna ask that of you, right? I need you to do this for me. Can you do that? If not, what can you do? What can we find out? And I can maintain that connection. Before that, I would go to I like it'll build up, and then I grow resentful, and then all of a sudden, like I'd vomit it out, but I'd vomit it out in a way where I was closing my heart and I was disconnecting. I was making them wrong because that's the only way I knew how to do it. I think that was saying that out loud now. I think that was 100% how that was modeled to me as well growing up in my family, right? That was how we gave each other feedback. There's not a lot of connection to begin with, but then like any kind of negative feedback would be done with no connection, no love, and making the other person wrong.
I see. So with the people and individuals you work with now, what approach do you use to attack a situation like that now?
You go the opposite way. So what I do first is I connect from my heart to theirs. Like before we even meet, right? When I'm alone and we're not even in the room together or in Zoom together or whatever, connect from my heart to theirs, and then have a dialogue from subconscious to subconscious or higher self to higher self or something. Where like, hey, I want you to know that I love you and I want what's in your highest best interest. I really want what's best for you. And I'm going to have some feedback to deliver for you. And here's what I need. Now, all of this is just happening inside my head, but it primes me for being in that loving state. And I do believe that doing something like that, it actually speaks. We're all connected. We're all one consciousness, right? So when I do that from my side, it impacts the other person right there. So they're more open to hearing the feedback in a loving way and take it in a way that I want it to land. And then in terms of actually communicating the feedback, one format that I've been taught recently is, it's like 7 steps. Number 1, are you open to hearing some feedback? Right. So we can say yes. Number 2 is, here's the specific things that I've noticed that you've done. Number 3, here's the story I make up about that in my head. That's very important, right? We can talk about specific behaviors, but we're always interpreting it. And by separating the two and saying, and taking ownership for the fact that this is a story I've made up in my head, that sets the stage, right? Versus like, oh, you're lazy, you don't care, you're not bought in, you don't love me. Like all these stories that we make up, name it. The story I've made up about that is that you don't care about me and my needs, or about like, with the work that we're doing or whatever it is. And then you ask, is that true? Or is that what you intended? Get their perspective on it, right? Chances are it's not going to be, they might go like, yeah, that's exactly right. But chances are they're going to be like, no, that's not exactly what happened. Here's why I did this behavior. Here's my reason, my story. And then that gives a lot of understanding and to connection and bonding. And then you can ask for request a specific behavior change. I would like for you to change, to behave in this way, to do this going forward. Can you commit to that? And that is a no is a perfectly valid answer there, right? No, I can't commit to that. Okay. Or yes, I can. But if it's no, then like, what can you commit to, or what would make it true for you? Do we have to shift some things around, or like what needs to happen? And then finally, like, just thank him for being open to hearing feedback. And that format is super simple, but it really makes a huge difference in how it lands. And what most of the experience is that we give feedback and we don't feel as good, we don't feel as connected after, and that makes us not give feedback, and then we end up in that negative loop that I was in, where resentment builds and like all of a sudden just comes out in a terrible way. By doing it this way, you come out feeling way more bonded and connected, and that makes you want to do it more, and it just makes it more effective.
That's excellent. I can definitely say that it appears all of those things that I can definitely say work. From what I heard from you, I just took some notes here. I could see that basically priming a person, right? So basically they can understand your expectations. That ignores the confusion on whatever lack of transparency there is. And people respond very good to feedback, and generally positive feedback, which seems to be one of the tools used in that aspect to work well with others. I remember one study I was reading before, and it was a study about dog training. And it made me think a lot about people are similar in the same way, in the fact that when training a dog, when a dog makes a mistake and you're training them the proper way, you don't like beat the crap out of the dog when they make a mistake. Now, maybe some owners do that, and that's not necessarily the right way. the way to get a dog to do what you want is when they do the correct thing, reinforce the positive, correct behavior with a treat, right? And people are
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, people are the same, right? Exactly.
People are the same way. So to constantly berate an individual on their mistakes or things that they've done incorrectly won't necessarily motivate them to correct them. Now, some people, it does benefit them and there's a balance to everything, but usually positive feedback, even in a way where it's constructive, seems to be the most beneficial thing to, based upon the way people act and absorb information and knowledge and feedback and criticism.
So true. So true. Yeah, my dog is going crazy out there. I don't know if you can hear it.
I can hear it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cute.
Got a delivery. She goes nuts. I'm hoping that she'll settle down in a minute. If not, I might have to go try some positive reinforcement.
Yeah, that's good. So switching lanes a little bit, I see that your book coming out soon. When is that coming out? Do you have a date or a time frame?
I don't. So I'll be honest with you. So I have two finished manuscripts, like first draft manuscript. I like to think of them as shitty first draft. One is for the book that you mentioned, that We Can Do This, Overcoming the Political Divide and Creating the World We Want to Live in.
Yes.
And the other is a book for men, about how to become a man, which is a journey that I've been on that I think is critical for men today and for our society and for the entire Western hemisphere. And the working title on that is Be the Dad You Never Had. I think I'm going to have to change that title, because what it means is not like, that was my technique for growing my masculine side and becoming a man, was I didn't have the dad that could help me do that. So I was emotionally broken, and especially like the masculine part of me was really, really underdeveloped. And so it's figuring out what would that ideal dad be for that inner boy that still lives inside of me, and how can I help him grow up to be a healthy, masculine, mature man? So that was my approach, and that's why the title. But then both of these books, actually, once they get to editing, I'm like, oh my God, this is work. And so
Yeah.
I haven't gotten them edited. I wanted to get the political divide book out before the election last year. And I was working to do that, but I failed to get it done in time. So now it's kind of just sitting there. I might drip out constantly. The other problem with publishing, as you may know, is like, you can put out a book, but like there are millions of titles published every year, and like, you put the book out and like nothing happens. That's not really satisfying. So I think it's like being a little more strategic about it and making sure that you have an audience for it before you actually publish it. So I'm working on some team and some stuff around that. So in general, my growth trajectory has been, I got very good at doing stuff myself. I can pick up most things, like video editing or photography, or like music production and songwriting and writing code and like all kinds of stuff. But what I didn't get good at and didn't start working on in earnest until like in the past couple of years is, how do I get a team to do that? Like, how do I, that's completely different, right? Figuring out how to do stuff myself, I got really good at that, but it doesn't scale, right? And so now figuring out how to get a team to do the things that I need, getting the right people, leading them and managing them in the right way, and then inspire, motivating, like setting the vision, getting like all that stuff, like reporting and all that. It's like a whole different game. So that's what I've been focused on learning.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate. I'm very skilled at many aspects that have to do with this and other things: video editing, filming, even audio editing and graphic design. I think a lot of people in this space of whether it's YouTube or social media or anything, they're pretty much are good at a wide variety of things that entail, so building a team together is obviously something a lot different, and it takes a different skill. So you talked about the political
if I
divide.
can,
Sure, go ahead.
no,
Sure.
go ahead. Well, I was just gonna, so the whole story behind that book is that I grew up born and raised in Denmark. Like I said, in Denmark, I always leaned more sort of right wing in terms of politics. I've always seen it like, it has to be up to the individual to make stuff happen. We can get support from the government to some extent, but really, I'd rather have people get support from friends and family and community and whatnot. And we need that, right? But then I saw very clearly like the whole social democrat thing, people on welfare, that it's zero motivation. There's zero encouragement to, like, we have so many history majors that have no job, then there's no sort of incentives to pick a major that's going to give you a good career path after, because like you major and then there are no jobs and then you just go into unemployment and you can do whatever the hell you want. And I mean, some people, for me, that would never be satisfying, but for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, that sounds pretty good. So I saw the dysfunction of that model very, very clearly. So, but when I came to America, for some reason, I started to see myself as a Democrat versus a Republican, and just because like I was in the tech world, everybody were Democrats. Like Republicans, clearly racist, right? They're
Right.
like nepotistic, racist, like bad people, I thought, and I wasn't paying much attention. And then after Trump got elected, I started to pay a lot of attention to the news and to politics. Also, because I had this moment back in 13 on my birthday. We were living in India, and my wife asked me these questions, and one of them was something to the effect of, "If you could do anything, what would it be?" And the phrase came out of my mouth saying, "I want to be a special advisor to the president of the United States on conscious nation building." And I was like, what the hell is that? Where did that come from? It was like fully formed out of my mouth. And then I had tears in my eyes for the next 20, 30 minutes. It was like such a powerful thing that kind of came to me from somewhere. And that stayed in my mind since. And so once I started to look into politics more, what I realized is that, well, the whole system is corrupt. Like Democrat or Republican, the thing is fundamentally deeply, deeply corrupt, especially in this country. Denmark is I think ranked as the least corrupt country in the world. So it took me a minute to wrap my head around it. And like, I keep uncovering new things, new layers of corruption. I'm reading this like Robert F. Kennedy book right now, The Real Anthony Fauci. And oh crap.
Yeah.
It's insane. I don't know if you read that. It's insane. Like the conspiracies and corruption and everything else that's happening in the medical, side of things in this country as well. And like everywhere, basically. But what I realized on a policy level is that a lot of the policies that are proposed, especially from the American left, the Democrats, are just bad. Like they don't work. It's like they don't think through second order effects, right? Like just because the bill title sounds good doesn't mean that it's actually going to do what you want it to do.
Yes.
To be like you incentivize certain behaviors, well, that's going to change people's behavior, and then there's going to be second and third and fourth order consequences that people aren't taking into account. And then I realized, you know what? I don't think they're stupid. I think that is pretty intentional. Like if you can run on like, oh God, racism, right? Like, and then you get elected. If you actually solved racism, like what were you going to run on next, right? Much more effective to pass laws that sound like they're going to fix problems, but actually make them worse, or at least don't make them better. And then you can keep running on the same platform because people have no like very short memory and attention spans, right? So that seems to be what's going on. But the big insight that I had is what I wanted to see as outcomes were the same, whether I saw myself as a Democrat or Republican, or like neither of these things. Like right now, I don't really see myself as like, I don't subscribe to either because the whole thing is corrupt. But if we focus on outcomes, like, hey, instead of policies, people, fight about policies, right? Like this thing, that thing, like, voter IDs are like, or single payer healthcare, or like whatever the hell it is, right? Forget that for a minute, right? We get so bogged down in the minutia and the details of that. And then what are the goals? What does success look like? Where are we going, right? How do we want people to be? And I think if you go high enough, we don't agree on everything for sure, but if you go high enough, you're like, all right, we want people to be happy, healthy, prosperous, and safe. We want a sustainable planet, and we want a thriving economy. We all want those things, unless you're like deranged, in which case that's fine. But we can't work with that.
Right.
And then if we can agree on that, and then make it break it down a little bit more detail when it comes to specific areas, then we can start to talk about, well, how do we actually get there? And do we have data on this? Can we make some small experiments? It anchors us firmly in reality, right? And I believe that in this country, there's a group on the fringes, right, on the far left that are hardcore, like woke activists, crazies. You've got some people on the right who are like Nazi, white supremacy, et cetera, like crazy. Like ignore those. Those are beyond hope. We can't do anything about that, like in the short term or in the medium term. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle that are the vast majority of people who are like, yeah, no, this is kind of crazy. This is kind of like messed up. And they might still see themselves as like Democrats or Republican or whatnot, just because that's what they've always been. A lot of people don't have the patience to think about this stuff or the time or like the energy. And it's so like, it can be so depressing to once you get into politics, it's really like, ugh, right? So, and I get that. So, but if we can have that conversation around like, what do we actually want to achieve and what's the best way to get there? And I have some ideas, but they might not be great ideas. They might be terrible ideas. They might be things I'm not aware of. But just have that conversation in that context. Then I think we can do a lot. And essentially, it's like we, ordinary citizens of the Western Hemisphere, we need to take power back. We need to realize we actually not even take the power back. We need to realize that we are the power. We have the power, and we've just been giving it away because most people are too, can't be bothered to pay attention. And that's true in Denmark as well, where most people are brainwashed into believing in the social democratic state, even though they can see every day it doesn't work, right? But if we can wake people up to realize, no, it's not like, and we have the power and we can choose how we want it. We can just kick people out and get some better people in government, to the extent like they can rig elections, and I'm sure they do, but that can only take them so far. Right. So that's really what that project is about. And there's the book, and there's this project or group or community that I call Notable Nation. That's all about like doing that, creating that, society. And right now, to be honest, like both of those are a little bit dormant in terms of the action. Again, I don't have the team and the bandwidth to really put that together right now, but it's still very, very much an ambition of mine. So, at some point when the timing's right, I'm going to be diving into that more again.
No, that's great. From listening to you, I can clearly see that you have a goal in mind and you have a mission in mind, and you're attacking it and looking at everything with the approach of viewing it through the most clearest lens possible, without trying to be skewed. And
it's so important to be able to recognize when you're wrong about stuff, right? Like,
yes.
Hey, you have better insights, better data, better ideas. That's great. Like, I'm going to change my mind. And most people aren't capable of doing that. And I get
Correct.
that. It can be psychologically threatening because they have their identity locked up into opinions and beliefs and stories about themselves and belonging and tribal stuff. And they're afraid. Like a lot of reasoning is like tried first, right? Like, what does my tribe believe? And then I'm going to believe the same. And it's hard and threatening to other people and to your self-identity to go against that. I have all kinds of compassion for that. I've done a lot of work to know who I am and get a sense of identity that's not attached to any of those things, but it's just like my own innate awareness, which is why that's a big part of it too, is like, what I realize is that we can't solve anything through politics. We as human beings are God creatures. We are creative beings. We can create our lives, our world any way we want, essentially. Like, we have so immense powers that are or bestowed us by spirit, by God, but whatever. Like we are life, right? We're not separate from life. We are life itself, but people don't realize it. And so we can't solve it through politics right now because people are not there vibrationally or maturity level wise. So that's why I'm like, all right, the next 10, 20 years is I'm going to do what I can to raise people's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual maturity so that they're capable of actually creating this world. Because right now we can't, because people are just too stuck in sort of low vibration, fear, depression, sadness, pain, like state. And from that state, you can't create an amazing life, an amazing world.
No, that's great. I definitely could say that I feel a similar way in regards to how to attack the situation. If individually, people have to be able to listen to ideas they don't like, try their best to be objective, and when they are being subjective, to try to, if you can, step out of your own skin and view the way that you're looking at things, and trying to surround yourself with people who challenge your ideas. Anybody who's around me, I constantly find myself challenging their ideas as much as possible, as a way to not attack them. Like I tell my family, my best friends, we are on the same team. I'm not here to attack you or anything like that. But as you know, I will challenge your ideas, and we should be challenging ideas because iron sharpens iron, and that's the best thing that we can do. But I noticed that a lot of people are not very open to hearing ideas that are opposite of theirs, right? Directly, you've done some work on this from studying on different things. And I've even seen that when it comes to people directly, and from psychologists who've done work, that when you tell somebody they're wrong, or they feel that you are insinuating that they're wrong, depending how high or low a person's ego or self-esteem is, they will generally internalize it as an attack. So especially in things like politics, if you're having a conversation with somebody and you are telling them about their point on that could possibly be wrong, depending how their self-esteem is, they might generally not find that you are being objective to their point. They will internalize it that you are directly attacking them as a person. So,
Totally.
So it does appear that we can somehow, even with the corruption and the fact that, and my approach to politics is there is lots of corruption that's present. And my thing is, it doesn't appear that the system is exactly corrupt, more so than the goals of the people who have underlining focus, who get into politics and do opposite of what we voted them in for. So as a whole, us as individuals, it's best that I see that we do things like this. We have conversations with each other. We work out ideas. We try to fix things at the ground level, and not try to, even as you suggested, give all the power to the government. The government is just supposed to essentially be the overseer of things that, of the people, and just make sure things don't get too out of hand. But generally, they're not supposed to be the caretakers of the people, whether it's the American people or the people of Denmark. So you seem to be.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the government is supposed to do whatever we want it to do, right? But the problem is, and then when the government has its own agenda, if you will, like
Correct.
And then they want to influence the population to believe certain things so that they can get more power. And that, I mean, that's 100% where we're at, right? There's a term that I love, which is called steel manning. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's the opposite of straw manning. And it's like straw manning is like, you mischaracterize someone else's argument so that you can shoot it down. Steel manning is the opposite. It's like, I want to hear and understand your point of view, and then I want to be able to articulate it better than you are able to, right? So that I articulate, so what you believe, or your point of view, or your opinion is blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yes, that's exactly it. right? That's exactly it. So you feel exactly represented and heard. And then I can go like, all right, I appreciate that. And I can see that viewpoint. Here's my answer to that, right? But you'll have to first make sure the other person feels heard, seen, represented by your interpretation. And until you can do that, you have no business arguing against, right? You're not even really arguing against their perspective, their point of view. You're just arguing against your own straw man argument.
Yeah, that exactly what you're saying. I've mentioned that to either different colleagues I work with and best friend and business partner, and we've had other friends. And in conversation, we debate a lot of things because, again, we're iron trying to sharpen iron. And we've actually lost a friend in the process due to the fact that my best friend has a very strong way of verbalizing his opinion. And then when you verbalize your opinion in such ways that people can't digest, again, they get defensive, right? So some things that I've tried to tell him is that, everything, we agree that everything about her point particularly isn't wrong, but the overall framing of it is in a direction that leads to just an incorrect idea. So he will pound on that idea. And to where a point is, she's unable to digest it, right? So in the end, this causes people to become distant. So again, it appears that you do have the good understanding that in conversation, as sad as it may seem, you can't just be openly with no restraints in a conversation to just express your idea, especially against topics that are polarizing to someone. Right. You kind of have to use emotional intelligence and practical intelligence also to try to frame things in a way where people can digest them, since they are very sensitive topics in which people have specific mind frames that don't allow them to easily see other ideas, right?
100% right. And especially like some of these things, when you start to get to understand the depth of the corruption of our society, especially here in America, and how the media is colluding with big pharma and big ag and like big tech and politicians, and like the whole thing is like one big web of conspiring with the national security state, right? Conspiring against the regular people here and treating us as assets to be like cows to be milked, and abused and manipulated. And like, once you start really going down this rabbit hole, it shatters your world, right?
Yes.
It shatters your sense of security and trust in the state and the justice system and like all of it. It's scary if you haven't already found a safe place within you, right? Which most people haven't, right? We're searching for safety and security and certainty out there, and we think that we have it. It can never truly be found out there. It can only ever truly be found inside, in the present moment, in our love, in our beings, in our awareness. But like 0.001% of people maybe are there. Like there's like very, very small number of people are there. And so their world is going to be break down, and like you go there, they're going to have nightmares. They're going to have all kinds of emotional reactions to this stuff, like stress, fear, anxiety. It's not good. It's not healthy. And then there's going to be huge pressure to just like shut that down subconsciously. Like not even like, no, I can't. It's too much. Like, I'm just going to go back and live my life and vote Democrat or whatever it is. Right. I get that. I have a lot of compassion for that, which is why we need we don't need anything, but like the path is to help people learn to deal with fear, learn to breathe through fear, learn to recognize that fear comes from beliefs that you have about something negative that's going to happen in the future. It might be a second from now, a millisecond, it might be years from now, whatever. But we'll teach people to find that sense of okayness in the moment inside of themselves, because without that, we're not going to get anywhere, right? They use fear to control us. And currently it's working like gangbusters. It's really working phenomenally well.
Yes.
And like, it pisses me the fuck off, because like all these people, like, we know what fear does to our bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
it hurts our immune system. It creates tension. It makes us more sick and unhealthy. So now we're going to be needing more drugs and we're more unhappy. And of course, that's not the people in power in this system, they don't mind that one bit. It's like, it's so infuriating and mean, sinister, evil, if you will. And that said, I think that some people like to think of the fight between good and evil, and I'm not fully on board with that, in the sense that I might be naive, but I do believe that at the core, every human being is is pure love and pure joy or bliss, but coming from a place of pure love. But we're so distorted through upbringing, fear, whatever happened to us, ancestral energy, whatever it is. It's possible for every one of these people who are doing incredible harm right now it would be possible to get to their hearts and open their hearts and crack them open. And I've seen that happen with a lot of people over the time, not people at that level, but I've seen it happen. I've experienced it happen with myself. But chances are it's not going to happen for these people in this lifetime. I think some people are obviously just kind of too far gone, where yes, theoretically it's possible, but in practice, it ain't gonna happen, right? But yeah, it's fascinating just how broken some people are. And that said, it's also, what would life be without some of that stuff, right? It's the best theater of ever. It's the best drama ever. We go watch TV, and I can barely find any fiction that I care to watch these days, because it's just so boring. And a lot of it's so woke and predictable and all that you just get bored with it, right? Whereas
Yes.
reality is freaking amazing. It's really, really cool. It's really exciting.
I agree.
What's going to happen? Are we going to live in the new CCP over here in the Western world? Are we going to live under tyranny and authority and authoritarianism for a year, 10 years, couple decades? What's going to happen? It's very exciting to see what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah, so I know our time is running out of the sand timer here. There's a few grains left, I see, but I will definitely say, I agree with a lot of things that you're saying. Definitely, it starts with the person and us as individuals. We should go back to a lot of different traditional things that we do, talking to each other and loving life and staying out of this digital ecosystem and this new metaverse now that's coming out, to where we're just getting people more into this machine. The interpersonal relationships are what is good, and it's us who needs to take back the power from for our lives and our society and our ecosystem and our economy, not the government.
Yes,
I wish,
and that's going to happen. I'm absolutely convinced that is where we're headed. It's going to happen. I don't know when.
Right.
I don't know if we're going to have a couple decades of tragedy before it happens, but I know
it might.
Will.
It might.
Absolutely will.
Because as we know from an individual level that without darkness, how as us individuals, how would we shine so bright? Right? Darkness always, we go through darkness and it makes us form into a new being, right? A butterfly. We go through that process. And I think societies will do that too. And hopefully that will happen for us.
And we at Simplero, we're getting people who come to us who are, fed up with social media censorship and all that stuff. And I'm like, we're not going to censor your stuff. Your stuff is safe with us.
Excellent.
We will never stop you. And I'm with the old ACLU that I will defend to the last, to my death, your right to say things that I disagree with. I think that is absolutely fundamental. Yeah.
I mean, because I forgot who said it, but you're only learning when you're hearing ideas that are different from yours. You're not learning anything when you hear ideas that are the same as yours.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. I wish we had more time. Definitely in the future, we could definitely do this again. And then next
Happy to,
time,
my friend.
and then next time we could definitely go into more of your business things that you have and entrepreneur endeavors that you have. And I always like to see where the rabbit hole goes in this podcast. It's why it's verbal artwork. You dip your paintbrush in the colors and you see what you create on an empty canvas.
Great.
Right. So thanks, Calvin, for being on an episode of Verbal Artwork with Mr. Rembrandt. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rembrandt, for having me. This is phenomenal. I'm glad that we connected. I'm glad that I got to meet you.
Yes, I'm glad too.
I'm sure we'll stay connected in the future.
Yes, definitely. 100%. Thanks, Calvin.